There's this fighter, Forrest Griffin, and he said before every fight, he would fill up the bathtub with like water and he would just sit in it and he would think about all the worst things in the world that could happen during that fight. And then he would pull the drain and it would basically like take all that stuff and he'd be like, I'm flushing it down the drain. He's like, okay,
That's cool. Yeah.
he was like, the worst things in the world happen though. Where am I at? And he was like, well, he's like, my mom still loves me. I still have a roof over my head. It was like kind of these things. He's like, it's not all bad. So let me go. But it's kind of like, I like what you said about putting yourself in the worst already happened. Where am I? How does it feel? And it's
Yeah.
like, okay, well,
Yeah.
I experienced that. I'm still here. I can keep going. So I like that. It's all just this is the thing. Everybody, they want the
Dude,
checklist. It's the mindset.
dude, it is. It's so much mindset.
Yeah.
So much.
So a big piece of your business now is if people are paying attention to between the lines, you're talking about real estate is really just product that you run the business of. So I've heard this said a lot, but people just don't want to listen that the key to being successful is really marketing and sales. And that
100%.
happens to be two of the huge things you have. And you mentioned something earlier about your conversions, and those conversions were extremely impressive. So obviously you're doing more than just saying, hey, do you want to sell your house? So
Yeah,
talk a little
absolutely.
bit about your process, and I know you have an entire system for it, but maybe just like an overview, some little secret skills I know you've mentioned before that people have in that sales transaction to get maybe a better result in those conversations.
Nick, it's funny. I work with, not only my own team, but also I have a lot of people in my community, in what I call the REI Sales Academy, and a lot of people within my community there that I work with all the time and listen to calls. And it's amazing, Nick, how many opportunities we leave on the table. And it's not intentional, but what it comes down to is people just don't understand how to really communicate with someone in a sales type environment. Okay. So most of us, think about this, most of us have been trained pretty well all our lives by poorly executed sales processes by poorly trained salespeople. And I always tell my students, I say, look, all of you have been through sales training before, even though you think you haven't. I said, for example, you go to a car dealership, you walk out on the dealership lot, right? Next thing you know, you see a salesperson coming out. First thing they're going to say is, hey, Nick, man, what can I help you with today? And what's the normal line, Nick?
I'm just here to look, just browsing.
And that's what everybody says. I'm just looking. I'm just browsing. Why is it that we say that?
Because we don't
Right?
want to feel the pressure.
Right. We don't want to feel the pressure. But it goes back to at some point in time we were trained on that. Okay. Why do think about this? Going to a mall, a shopping mall, and you're walking around, you see a kiosk in the mall where they're selling perfume or cologne. And you know how that is around there. And what do we typically do? Yeah, we're walking away from it, right?
Yeah.
So it's interesting. So if you think about it, we're all so what we have to realize is that is traditional sales processes are very dysfunctional. And unfortunately, so many people in our space, Nick, still try those old tactics on things. And what they do is they go in, they work with a seller, they try to create pressure, and just come in and they spend all the time talk about the numbers, right? The numbers on things. Well, you guys, you have to realize is that there's a different way of doing this. And that's what we've done within the Sales Academy is set it up where the sales process is based upon the way human beings actually make decisions to buy or sell something. Okay. So if you look at it, we're going with the grain in the wood versus against it. Okay. So with that, here's why I always compare it. If you think about this, every one of you that we're listening to this here is, I'm sure every single one of you buy stuff online on a regular basis, right? Amazon, let's just say, for example. So there's a process to you buying something on Amazon, okay? First thing you're going to do is identify a need or a want or something like that, right? You're going to have, that's the first thing that goes into your mind. Second thing you're going to do is you're going to do research on it. You're going to look it up, check it out on things, right? Compare some stuff. And then thirdly, you're going to make a decision. Boom. And you're going to buy. Well, I ask people this question. I said, that is the natural buying system or selling system that's pre-wired into you as a human being. All right. That's your natural system on that. Well, and why does that work so well? And the question comes down to the answer to this question is because there's no salesperson involved. So what you have to look at is once you throw a salesperson involved, it changes the whole dynamic of things. So most people in our space come in and the person has the ability to make decisions on their own. And you come in and you're going against their ability to make decisions. You're causing pressure, just like you talked about the car dealership or seeing the kiosks there. It's perceived discomfort, perceived pressure on things. So naturally, what we do is we put up defense mechanisms. We want to counter that. So what we have to realize is that the best way to get a human being to make a decision like that is not to come in and create pressure for them on things. The best thing we can do is work with a sales process that doesn't go against that, but goes with the flow. So what happens is that's the whole reason the sales process is designed, is to basically flow just like the human mind does to make decisions to buy or sell something. That's the flow of that. Okay. And that's when you do that, then I always say this, you're not selling, you're simply assisting somebody in a decision-making process.
Interesting. So does this work with the same process, whether it's outbound or inbound?
Doesn't matter. Yep. Doesn't matter what kind of lead it is whatsoever at all on things. It's, just give you, your viewers a little more context on this too, is, think about the typical call we have on a lot of times on acquisitions. And you could be going in the field on appointments, or you could be doing it virtually. Most of the time, we're getting on a call with somebody, right? Start talking to them, find out who they are, get a little, situational information such as, address of the property, all that. Nowadays, we typically have all that because everything's available. So we go on there, and then one of the first things we're trying to do is find out, hey, why you selling, right? Trying to find out a little bit there, trying to find out what's going on. And then it's not uncommon for most sales calls to go to the next level, which is, hey, let me ask you, what are you asking for the property, right? Or and sometimes before that, they'll go into condition of the property, right? Tell me about the condition of the property. How's the roof? How's the furnace? How's the bathrooms? And kitchen and windows and all this stuff, right? We go in and we want to find out about all the condition. Then they'll go in and say, man, it sounds like it needs a lot of work. What are you asking for the property? That type of thing. And then we'll make an offer. Okay. Very common type of transaction sales process, if you want to call it that, that I hear. Okay. That's very common with it. Then at the end, what happens? You make an offer. Seller says, let me think about it. I need to talk to my attorney. My neighbor, they said if I ever did sell, that let them know first. Or my tenants, I want to give them first shot on this, on things, all these things, right? Talk to my cousin. I got, cousin's a real estate agent, whatever it is. Common things, right? And these are all what we call like deal killers on things. And it's funny on that because, Nick, all these things we hear over and over again, but what we don't realize is a lot of those, replies, answers to the questions we ask, we're causing those reactions by the way we're communicating with our client. And by doing that, we set ourselves up to fail simply by communicating the wrong way. So what we're doing in that situation, if you think about it, we're going in, just quickly find out some information, condition of the property, boom, we try to make an offer on it. Guys, what happens on things, I want you to think about this. When I go through, and if I'm talking to you, or I'm talking to Nick right here today, and I'm going through and I'm asking a bunch of questions about his property, and next thing you know, I ask all those, and then I want to know what he's asking, and then I turn around and make him an offer. When did I actually figure out what his problem was? And when did I actually solve it? I didn't. What I did is I went in and got surface level. He says, I'm selling because I don't want to deal with tenants anymore, right? It's vacant. And then we check the box. We go, oh, that's his motivation. He doesn't want to deal with tenants anymore and it's vacant. No, that's surface level. We don't know really what's going on. It's like I was a good example is water skiing and diving. Water ski, you're just going to find out what's going on the surface. When you dive, you're going to find out what's all going underneath, and you're really going to understand the water at that time and what's going on down there. It's the same way in sales. So when you're communicating with somebody, some of the things we don't do is we don't go in and jump in and start asking, what do you want for the property? We don't go in and do all that. We're trying to figure out what the problem is, and then we're going to dive deep into that. And here's something all your listeners can take from this too, Nick, is this. There's three things that have to be present for any type of sale to happen. Number one, you have to assess the problem. You have to know what the problem is. Number two, you have to agitate that problem. And number three, you got to break the person's belief system. And when you can do that, boom, you can put deals together.